there, it's Sandee Sgarlata. Get ready to dive deep into incredible stories of people who've taken life's challenges and turned them into a roadmap to happiness. On this show, we're not just talking about overcoming obstacles. We're uncovering the real, gritty secrets to living a life filled with peace, joy, and genuine happiness. This is Happiness Solved. So let's get started, because happiness is a choice, and the choice is yours. Nick, so great to see you again. How's it going today?
Oh, it's phenomenal. I mean, sun's out in Chicago, great weather. So excited about this podcast and, kind of closing out the week. So I want to close out the week strong here.
No kidding. Isn't that the truth? I tell you, these weeks, the whole year is just flying by.
I agree. I'm like, it can't be September, but it is. It's like September 18th. It's football's going on and baseball's coming to an end. Kids are back in school. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's like I did not get all my Q3 goals done or to-dos done. And so now I'm like, do I kick them forward or were they not that important? So do I cancel them out?
Well, and that's the thing. And I feel like every year I get to September, I'm like, wait, I'm still working on stuff I started a couple months ago.
Right.
I feel like, maybe we need to realign our goals and because then we can't get it done in the time that we think we can, right?
I agree with that. And I was looking at something which is like a 90-day sprint, right? So it's like, okay, does that, does that make sense? What does that look like? Is that really going to get it done for me? Or is that just kind of, just putting more things on my to-do that I can't get done and therefore I'm going to be frustrated? But it's interesting. I don't know. I don't know the answers. If I did, I'd share them with our listeners. But, how do we get more stuff done? I think the world is ready to get back to work, right? After the summer seemed a little slow and people were enjoying themselves. And now it's like, okay, people are wanting to get back to work. So that's awesome.
Well, yeah. And, you bring up a really, really good point because, of course, I'm getting a call right now. Let me put it on Do Not Disturb. But the thing is, you talk about people who say, oh, you can get so much done, the 4-hour work week. I'm sorry, I call BS on that.
I agree. I mean, I think if you asked him, and I've heard people, like he'd call BS too. I think it was just a marketing just a marketing ploy that got the book sold and, certainly launched him. The interesting thing is that, there's a couple things in that where he's like, oh, put this email autoresponder, which is, I only check emails once a month or something like that. And ironically, I have a client that had that on like an AR email. Right. And it took somebody the wrong way and they were just complaining. How dare you, in customer service only answer this once every 30 days or something. I'm like, well, it's probably not smart to put it on a customer service email, but people read that book and took it as gospel and launched him and his podcast. So,
and that's awesome. And I think that, I would say I have a 4-hour work week when it comes to taking care of my house.
Sure.
I probably don't spend more than 4 hours when you add it all up. I don't want to spend more than 4 hours cleaning or cooking or doing laundry, right? But when it comes to your business, the thing is you can work smarter, right? And I believe in that. You can definitely work smarter. It's just, any sort of business, and I know this for myself, if you do take a step back and you're not paying attention to certain areas because you're like, oh, it's fine. I'm telling you, when it's not getting that love, it starts to go downhill.
I think that's spot on, right? And as a founder, right, as a entrepreneur, it's easy to kind of chase the next thing. But if you're not doing, whether it's feeding the proverbial funnel, right? Feeding the pipeline. I know you're a phenomenal keynote speaker, right? So it's reaching out to meeting planners and getting, building relationships. So when they have a need for a topic that you're talking about, you're at the top of the mindset, if you will. So it is, I think whatever doesn't get love. I mean, the 4-hour work week should be 4 hours for all the 20 different things, right? So it ends up being an 80-hour work week. And it's okay. I got to spend 4 hours on prospecting. I got to spend 4 hours on creating IP. I got to spend 4 hours on this. And if you don't, I agree. Now there's probably some sprints, right? When you're in a zone and you're in a flow and you just got to
Sure.
focus on getting something done or getting many things done. You have to do that. But, I do think there's so much bad advice out there, right? And
Right.
people read a book and it's the new hot book and we're all chasing it. And I got enough grandma here to remember when we were all chasing Japanese manufacturing in the 90s, right? And then that didn't turn out well. And so there's always these waves of re-engineering, and re-engineering kind of worked for some but didn't work for others. And we all want we all want the edge, right? And sometimes the edge is just blocking and tackling, right? Sometimes the edge is just doing the right thing every day and focusing on the most important thing. As Stephen Covey told us, right? Focus on the most important thing. And then, the other stuff, if you can't get to them, I think you have to be okay with that, right? And I think
Yeah.
sometimes it's difficult to be okay with that. That's, I think that's human nature, right? And we all struggle for that.
Yeah, for sure. So for the audience, I usually do a little bit of an introduction, but it was like, let's just go because it made sense.
Jump
And
right
that's kind
in.
of how
I
I
love it.
roll.
Yeah.
But for the audience, Nick Loise has been a salesperson, sales leader, successful entrepreneur, marketing and sales executive, President's Club winner, speaker, and author. You're now on your third entrepreneurial endeavor, which is Sales Performance Team, a company that is focused on helping small to mid-sized businesses improve their sales leadership, sales processes, systems, and playbooks. Love it.
Well,
love everything you do.
Thank you. And thank you for having me on this. I mean, I love the topics that you have. I love, the guests that you have. Really, I don't think we talk a lot about some of the stuff. And so I appreciate, every podcast I think is got a place, right? And I think people are looking for answers in good interviews and thoughtful, thought-provoking things. And we want to learn from people that have kind of been there, done it, and have a story to share. And I love the work that you're doing, and I love everything that that's happening with the podcast. And I know this takes a lot of work, so I really want to appreciate that and allow you to realize how much I appreciate that.
Oh,
And I think your
you.
listeners do too.
Thank you. It's funny this week because I had an interview yesterday and he was saying the same thing. And I was like, thank you. Because you don't get a lot of love as a podcast host. And I don't think that people really recognize that this is a free service that is being provided to people. Right. But it costs money because this is a business. Right. So,
right. And there's things you could be doing that you're not doing, right? So it's not only monetarily, it's everything. And I agree with that, right? And I'm sure you learn, right? But it also, people, we should realize it. So, throw her some love, throw her a like. If you're listening to this, like it, share it, put a good comment on, let's raise it up in Apple and all that good stuff. And we're on YouTube, right? So you can see us smiling while we're talking and all that good stuff.
Appreciate it so much. Yeah. Selfishly, I do this podcast because I want to talk to experts like you.
Oh, thank you.
And other people that I have on, right? Because I'm so curious. I've always been curious, and we all learn differently. I learn from visual and audio.
Okay, auditorial,
Auditorial, yeah. And I also sometimes learn from reading, but I find I get more benefit from listening to people's stories.
Yeah.
Right. And I love that. So what is your backstory? Let's let the audience hear about you. Because I know we've talked before, but I don't, it was a few weeks ago. I don't remember everything we talked about.
Yeah.
But let's hear your story.
So, my story, is pretty simple, kind of grown and raised in the Midwest, and went to school in the Midwest. And after post-college, kind of traveled throughout the United States and worked in different industries, and that always worked in sales, but in different industries, but also different locations. Because when I was young and in college and naive and thinking that, okay, I was just going to go work throughout the world, right? And I wanted to work in different cultures and be immersed in them just to learn from the people, right? So, so I'm like, okay, well, I've never been to the South, so let me go work in the South. And I've never been to the West Coast, so let me go work on the West Coast. And I've never been to the East Coast, so I started the sojourn, if you will, in Boston. But along the way met the love of my life, and we've been married ever since, right? So, and she had come from a family that had moved around a lot, so we decided we're going to come back to where we were, which was Chicago and the Chicago suburbs, and raise our family, and it worked out, right? It's been a phenomenal journey. So that's like on the personal side. I got two great kids. When they were teenagers, I don't know if I would say that on a podcast, but now they're adults and we're having just the time of our lives. My wife and I are empty nesters, and we're having a lot of fun. And she travels for her work, so sometimes I have the ability to travel for mine. So sometimes I can catch on. So we're going to go to Amsterdam. An example would be she's going to Amsterdam in October. I'll jump on a plane, go with her. She's going to Dubai. I wish I could have went, but that's tape. On the day, when I'm not working, love doing anything physical, love reading. We're big foodies, right? So that's probably why I like the physical stuff, so I could burn off the food. And so we're in Chicago, or we're going to different places, just having a really good time with a meal, and maybe some good wine, maybe a good cocktail. So, I do enjoy all those finer things. From a business standpoint, I've always been in sales, as you were kind enough to point out in the introduction. So I've sold everything, right? From financial services, investment vehicles, and stocks and bonds. First starting out on the phone, 200 dials every day, building up a book of business, and then sold some services, sold some managed services. Was in the healthcare space, selling that for a while, and I really got a chance to kind of sell to all different types of buyers. I started my second business, which was a marketing firm. After I was a VP of marketing and business development for a large company, and said, well, let me try this on my own. So we built that up. We had some venture capital money. We did a lot of stuff in the online space. This was in the early 2000s when money was being thrown at people that did work in marketing on the online space. We were direct response marketers, so we did a lot of different things. That was fun. We sold that. And then I got recruited to a private equity owned company that was a marketing education company. And we served small to mid-sized businesses. And we did learning platforms, we did events, we had online learning, you name it. We had coaches, we did some white label stuff. It was a lot of fun. And I, love the marketing space, love the sales space. One of the things we found was that many small business owners could get marketing, understood lead generation, but they struggled with hiring good salespeople. Mm-hmm. So we built out some IP. The IP is now sales performance team. So my third journey into entrepreneurship, hopefully this one sticks, but maybe the goal is to sell it at some point.
Awesome. I love it. Yeah. Sales is a tricky thing. And it can be very stressful.
I find,
I actually had one sales job where it was just that. I call it the hardcore sales, where this was back in the 80s. And I literally was walking around office buildings, walking in, trying to get appointments. Knocking on doors in office buildings. And I did it for about 8 months, but it was the same thing. You had to make so many calls every single day, all of that. And it was tough, but I'm grateful for that experience because I think it's something that will really serve people, even if you don't end up in sales, just understanding the process and that I don't care what anybody says. It's always a numbers game. Yeah. You can track it. You got to talk to X amount of people to get one sale, and you got to figure that out, right? I had an IT recruiting company. I started in 1998. Yes. And we knew after about a year and a half that I had a small team of like four recruiters and an admin. We knew that after every 20 interviews, we would get one hire. It was clockwork. So we knew, like, guys, got to get to 20. And we knew, and sometimes you'd hit 20, get a hire, and the next one would be a hire. The next interview would be a hire, right? And then you'd have to wait 19 more times.
For 19.
Right. But it worked. It was clockwork. So anyway, it's a good experience for any entrepreneur to really understand that. Yeah.
I think we should make it mandatory, right, for entrepreneurship. And if I had a magic wand, I would, one is teach them that sales shouldn't be so stressful, shouldn't be bone, right. Like people just, I talk to entrepreneurs all the time. They're like, I can't sell. I don't want to sell. I didn't get into this business to sell. And my philosophy is you did get in this business to sell, right? Your job is to market and to sell, though right. You may be a great dentist or you may be a great, whatever it is, physical therapist. The world needs to know about it. Right. And so It is funny. And if you disengage, just like you and I were talking about, I grew up in the business where it was 10 dials, got you 3 connects, got you 1 appointment, right? And that appointment may or may not convert into a sale. Then, X amount of appointments would then get you to 1 sale to open
Right.
an account, right? So you knew those numbers. Those
Right.
numbers are different for all industries now, but we track them because I get the opportunity to work
Yeah.
with all different industries. So I could see, okay, it takes 20 interviews to get a hire. I love that you knew that number. And I think as an entrepreneur, that should be the number one thing that you're tracking. You should be tracking this stuff, because what it will do, it will not allow you to get nervous. It will not allow you to become disengaged. You realize, okay, I just have to talk to 20 people, do my spiel, practice my spiel, get that down. But at the 20 people, I'm going to have a new client, or I'm going to have XYZ or 1, 2, 3. So I think that's really, really super important. That's one of the disciplines that we do and we bring. What are the KPIs, if you will? What are your numbers? Let's track them. Let's not track 50,000. Let's just track the critical 4, right? Or 3.
Right.
So that from there, we're like, okay, this makes sense. We're on the right track. Let's keep going. And it also allows you to see, oh my gosh, for the last month, it's gone to 25. Is it us, right? Like for you, right? It took
Right.
25 interviews. So is it us? Is it the industry? Are we starting to see something going on? So this gives us a dashboard, if you will, a windshield and a rear view mirror to be able to look at and see, oh, something's going on with my business. Or maybe it's just a blip, right? So it's just 30 days. It's a blip. Let's track it for another 15 to 20 to see if it's now that KPI moved up to 25 interviews. So I love it. We love sales, right? We love working in sales. Now, listen, as every day isn't sunshine and roses. We work at small to mid-size businesses, right? And I say we do some pre-revenue companies, and it allows us to see a lot of different things because I'm in a lot of different industries. And some industries are bellwethers, right, to others, right? So they're like the dog whistle, if you will. When you start seeing people pull back on home improvement, home services, there might be some level of retraction in the marketplace,
Right.
because the people will always be spending on their house, if you will. When you start seeing, 50% of our businesses are traditional, 50% are what we call coaches or online, or, that type of thing. When you start seeing people not investing in courses or in themselves, right, or taking those type of things, that is telling you that something's going on. So we get to see everything, and it's a lot of fun, and we learn every day. And in sales, we're always looking for that edge, whether it's AI, right? So we're looking at that, whether it's just using offshore talent. We use I have a partner, and we do a lot of work with offshore talent, which is really, really great for certain things. And they're really, really good, hard work ethic, and they show up, and they just love doing the job. And so I never have to
Yeah.
worry about that.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
that's kind of what we do.
I love it. So a couple of things I want to mention. What we were talking about for the audience, when we're talking about, keeping track of your sales and having that dashboard, that is how you are going to maintain a sense of peace around your business, right? And
Right.
if you're not doing those things and you're feeling stressed, maybe now's the time to start doing that. Because I'm telling you, like it brings a level of, because I know for me, when at the end of the week, when I'm like, okay, I didn't hit the numbers that I wanted to hit this week, and you go back and you look at schedule, well, geez, I only talked to 5 people. Okay, I probably need to talk to more people if I want to move the needle. And so, if you're feeling that stress and you're in sales, you got the finger's pointing right back at you, right?
Yeah.
And you have a choice as to whether or not you're going to change it. So I just wanted to throw that out there. What do you think about, because I know for me, sales, the word sales has always been kind of like a dirty word, because I'm that person. I'm that entrepreneur who's like, I don't want to sell anything. What do you think about like reframing that word, right? Because I know for me, when I get on a quote sales call, it's not a sales call. It's a service. I'm providing value to them. And for me personally, I have to change that narrative in my head so I can show up in the right frequency, right? And not be like, ugh, right? So I can show up and be confident, be ready to share with this person on the other end everything that I bring to the table and how great because if you have that negative connotation associated with what you're doing, it's going to show up and you probably aren't going to make a sale, right? Wouldn't you agree?
Well, yeah, I think, so, if you have commission breadth, right? So the phraseologies that we use around the sales floor, if you hear that and people are acting that way, you're never going to do that. I do agree that sales is service, right? If you believe in your product and service and you know your product and services can help the individual that you're talking to, it is your duty to work through the barriers that they are going to have, right? Because we're all coming from, listen, we haven't really evolved as mammals, right? We're still around the campfire, right? Just the campfire is now a podcast, right?
Right.
Bro, it's
that's right. Still, no, it's so right. True. We really
have not evolved, and the status quo is safe. Though I may not like the status quo, it is still safe because I know the status quo is every day, right? So now you are coming into my life and you're asking me to do something different. Though that something different may be something I've wanted to do my entire life, there's still this tension and we don't like that tension. So we as salespeople have to realize that. I use a phraseology in one of our trainings, ABC, right? Which many people revert to always be closing. And I'm like, no. It's really always be curious and ask questions to people and figure out what's going on. Because if I could figure out what's going on here and what's going on here and what's going on in their entire universe, how does my product or service fit in? And then how can we work together to get to where we need to go? Because objections just is the prospect or the other person slowing down, right? Slowing down the decision. And that may be good, or it just may be their habit, or it may be, once again, fear. So is it fear? Is it uncertainty? Is it doubt? So it just depends on kind of what you're selling, and have that process. So I'm curious, and there's a great guy, I think I'm going to get his name wrong, but I think it's Todd Cipinini. And he wrote he's from Chicago, and he's got a great Twitter handle, and it's in essence the history of sales, right? So he's a sales nerd, right? And so I got to ask him, when did it get so icky, right? If your words, right? But I think that's true. When did it get so icky? Because if you go, in the 30s and in the 40s, it was just people trying to help others, right? So I'm curious as to
how it was an exchange. It was how we lived,
right?
Because we used to exchange, these. I'm going to hold a pen up. Let's just say this was a tool,
right?
And we exchanged it for some potatoes,
right? It was barter.
There's just the bartering, yeah.
You're so right, because listen, I make a joke. I grew up in a family that part of it was entrepreneur and part of it was corporate, right? And the entrepreneur, my grandfather and uncles owned a produce business for a long period of time. Well, that's the worst business in the world, right? Because your stock is declining and rotting as you're pulling away from the things. But what would it be was, at the end of the day, okay, I've got 4 cabbages, you've got potatoes, and then you go find the milkman, and everything would get traded out. But they weren't icky. They were just going to their accounts and saying, okay, Nick, I got melons on sale today, right? And so there was that, and we thought of it as exchange. I had another uncle that sold the switches and transistors and all of that, and he was the first distributor to go to Japan and get the Japanese into the Midwest market. He wasn't being icky, right? So it's wondering. I'm curious as to how we got to that point and what was it. Now, certainly, hey, listen, there's a horrible bro culture, if you will, in sales, right? We got to get rid of that.
Yes.
There is a lot of fake hubris, right? There is a lot of, strong arming people into products and services they don't need. That deserves to get classified as the wrong approach and the wrong way. But I'm going to reach out to Todd, and I'm going to find out, when did we start thinking of it as something negative? Because I got a big bookshelf behind me. Obviously, you guys could see parts of it, but there's one shelf that is just older sales books, right, from the 30s, from the 1990s,
Oh, wow.
1919s, right, not the 90s, right? So just older sales books, because I find it's good to know the history of your profession. And, they didn't talk about, put people in headlocks, right? Always, but they did talk about the same things that we're talking about. It was an exchange, right? Figure out how to help people, how your products and services fit in. And if you think about the madmen, right? So of marketing, right? They weren't doing icky. They were creating advertisements that we leaned in and enjoyed. Now, my gracious, you go on Instagram and you get bombarded with stuff that you're like, how did this even get in my feed, right? So I think, there's an old book by Seth Godin, Marketers Ruin Everything, right? I think we could add salespeople to that. Marketer and salespeople ruin everything, right? Because of the fact that we take something good and we turn it into something bad. Facebook was just a way for us to keep up on family and friends, right? And
Yeah.
exchange pictures and see, oh my gosh, look how big Susie's getting, and and just have an enjoyable interaction. Now, one is, I'm going to get ads. Two is, unfortunately, there's going to be 3 or 4 political, whatever side of the spectrum you're on. I'm not making judgment, but I don't want to see that. I still want to see my niece's pictures, right, from her first day of school. That's the stuff that I want to see. So it goes back to kind of marketers and salespeople ruin everything, because we make everything into a sales exchange.
So what came up for me when you were talking about that is thinking about the used car salesman, right?
Sure.
Because right. And they're the ones that go with the ABC, always be closing,
Yep.
Or, and I get it, right? They're trying to put food on the table just like everyone else. And the other thing that came up when you were talking about that for me is, like, if people could just, when you're having no matter which side you're on, really, if you're able to listen to the conversation and participate in the conversation with neutrality and not attach any emotion to anything that's going on in the conversation. Because at the end of the day, it's just a business transaction, really. Right. Even if it's somebody selling you a new milk product, it's business for him, right? He's just doing his job, right? And if we can look at it with neutrality and not, oh, they're just trying to take my money, or right from the one side, or the sales guys going, oh, they're wasting my, whatever the case is, right? If you can look at it with neutrality and not attach any emotion to it, that's one step in the right direction right there.
Correct. I think when you take the emotion out of anything, it makes it easier for both sides, right? Yeah. It's like, here's where we're at. I'm going to share with you what I think is the right thing for you to do. If you think that it's not the right thing to do, let's have that conversation. I do think, in all fairness to the sales side, is not only have they done things wrong, right? So pendulum swings, let's swing it back. Sure. So that they're acting more towards the benefit of society and the people that they're selling. But I do think that they get jaded because of the fact that, they've been lied to. They've been, oh yeah, this is definitely something I'm going to do. Send me over all the paperwork. And then the person doesn't want to say, I just can't do it. I just can't emotionally afford it. I can't financially afford it. I can't take the time into doing this, whatever it is. I just can't. So what do? We just lie, right? Because that's easier. And so if we want truth on the sales side, we need to be truthful on the prospect side, right? Or the customer side of saying, no, it's not for me. I just don't, I'm going to continue to look. The reason why, something in my gut tells me that this isn't the solution that I'm looking for.
And you know what? That's okay.
I'm okay with that. Give me that all day long.
Give me that all day long, and let me move on to the next person, right? If you're not interested, that's fine. Just tell me.
Yeah. I have no problem with that answer. I really don't. I'm okay with that more so. I want the yes, right? But I'm okay with, we're not going to do that. This guy was great. I love this salesman. He worked for me and I brought him to a couple different companies, and he was just a good old time sales guy, right? And I don't mean that in a negative way. Just cared about his customers, wanted to do right, figured out how to get win-win solutions. he said something once, and I've used it every time. So I'm always going to, I'm always going to put the caveat on him. He goes, Nick, I never would get into sales if I knew how sick I made people. And I'm like, well, what do you mean by that? He goes, well, every time I'm chasing somebody and I finally get a hold of them, they're like, oh, you know what? I would have called you, but I was sick, or, my kid was sick, or, and so I'm like, I didn't want to call you. It wasn't a priority for me at this time. Right. I know that you're calling me, and just, let's put this on to Q3, right? Or let's put it to next year. So just be honest with the salespeople. If you want them to be honest with you, let's be okay with the conversation and just be adults. And I'm okay with that.
Absolutely. I mean, and I think that we learned that somewhere along the way. And it was when we were children, and somehow we learned to tell these white lies.
Sure.
I can tell you, I am guilty of this. I remember the day I taught my son to lie. We were at Legoland in Carlsbad, California, or San Diego area, and he wanted to get on this ride. And it was like a little go-kart thingy, and you had to be 6.
Sure.
Well, he was 5, and he turned 6 in 3 months. But he was tall. So we're standing in line, and he read enough to, wasn't a great reader, but he could read. He's like, Mommy, the sign says I have to be 6. And I go, well, honey, you're going to be 6 in a couple of months. I said, it's okay. I said, you're tall enough. I said, so if they ask you, just say you're 6. Okay, there you have it. And I literally went, okay, remember this moment. This was the day you taught your son to lie.
Yeah. And that's
am I proud of it? Not really, but did he have a great time? Absolutely.
There you go.
And he was tall enough. It really needed to be just a height thing, not an age thing, but whatever. Now I'm justifying my behavior.
Well,
right?
no, but you know what? Listen, we all do that, right? We've all done it. Back in the old days when we used to go to the movie theater. Oh no, you're a kid, right? To save $3. No, but I'm not. It says that's 13. No, you're 10, right? Yeah. And it's just but it's the summation of everything. And there's no judgment, right? But we as a society are allowing that, and listen, there's other societies too, right? If you've ever sold into different markets, right? There's Indian markets or Asian markets, they'll say yes with the clear meaning of no, but they're just saying yes. It's just cultural, right? And they're very nice, and you're like, okay, I got a deal. You're like, no, you don't. And so there's societal things, right? There's cultural things. And these norms you have to realize and be a student of it if you really want to be successful in the sales side of business, right? Or just pick a demographic and ICP, right? Ideal customer profile for the people that are listening, that you just know so much about them that that if they say X, they mean X, or if they say X, they really mean Y, and just have that baked in. But there's also something too that I think we started to talk about that causes some of the problems that I want to go back to. Okay. And you said this on, I wish I had more business. And then if I take a look at my calendar, I realize I only made 5 calls. And for me to get more of XYZ, whatever that is, I need to do 15 to 20 calls. And so what happens? The salesperson doesn't do the work on the front end, and therefore doesn't have enough in the hopper, and therefore puts all the pressure that he possibly can on those 5 people or that one person. That's when we get into the manipulation. That's when we get into the sleazy car salesmanship, right? Because of the fact that a full pipeline for a salesperson will allow them to have that emotional detachment that we talked about. Saying, I got 50 other people that are on my calendar for this week. And if XYZ doesn't buy, right, I know what one is. And the other thing too is the other thing that we talked about at the beginning that I think is so critical is to know your numbers, right? You and your team never got panicked on the 18th call because you knew you had 2 more to get the applicant, to get the interview, right? To get the yes. And so knowing one is doing the work to fill the pipeline, and I'm pointing, and I've got 5 at me, right? I'm guilty of it, and I just talked about this week on a podcast, right? Where did you make mistakes? Mistake was when business was really good, I took the foot off the gas, right? And I learned from that, never to take the foot off the gas again. So and also know your numbers, right? So I think it's a summation of everything, and it's just a fascinating journey because we're all people, right? And we all want it to be a little easy, right?
Of course.
Man, I don't want to do 15 outbound dials today. But if I say I got to do 15 outbound dials to get one appointment, to have one good conversation, then that's what I got to do.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's just, if you don't know your business, then it's not going to happen for sure. So we're going to wrap up in just a minute. Is there anything else that you want to talk about? I mean, we've got time, but is there anything else you want to talk about before we wrap up?
I think, I like the work that you're doing, and, you think about, you do a lot of work with the peak performance, right? And I think that in some instances, salespeople are the peak performers or the athletes in business, right? Not taking anything away from all the other disciplines, but
for sure.
And how important the totality of the person is to have them be successful. And what I mean by that is, in the old days, it was 3 martinis at lunch, but that's all gone, right? So, the
no day drinking in business,
right. So the person that kind of keeps this all clear, right, and physically takes care of themselves so they can deal with the stress and the ups and downs is so critical. But I don't think we talk a little bit about that. And you come from an athletic background, right? As a if I recall, a figure skater, right? And you did a lot of coaching in that space. And is there an X factor that you see of those that are okay and those that are great, right? What do you? Because I think we could attribute that to salespeople too, maybe.
Of course. I mean, the people that are great are the ones that really embrace a full holistic lifestyle, and they've mastered it. When you look at all of the elite athletes, they don't drink, maybe on occasion, but they're not drinking at all during their season. The top ones are not. Look at Tom Brady.
Oh, master at diet.
Master at that, right?
Yeah.
Novak Djokovic.
Yep.
Here's another household name, Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift, I read in her Time magazine article, which was phenomenal. She completely changed for 6 months leading up to the beginning of her tour. She did not drink. She watched her diet. She was working out like 6-7 hours a day, like performing and practicing. Like, that's what it means. That's what it takes. You devote everything to it. Now, you don't have to be Taylor Swift, Novak Djokovic, or Tom Brady. And yet you just need to make sure that every day you are paying attention, right? What happens when we don't pay attention to our bank account and we just spend, right? Your overdraft.
Yeah, problems.
Yeah, problems. Yeah. Same things happens with our bodies. If we're not sleeping, I can't, every time I hear someone say, "Oh, I'll sleep when I die." I'm like, okay. And you probably just lost about 20 years of your life, right? Yeah. If you're not getting your sleep, right? Every day. It's just about those areas. Eating good, hydrating, lots of water, getting your sleep, exercise, getting those endorphins going in your body. Taking time to, work your brain and learn new things, exercise your brain as well. Pay attention to your thoughts, focus on gratitude. All of those things are just so simple, and they can make a big, big difference. I'm not saying you need to have that as your complete lifestyle, but at least, and it's, I'm not saying you have to like give up drinking or anything like that. If you enjoy having your cocktail at night with dinner, absolutely. It's just, there's got to be, and I'm not going to use the word balance because I do not like that word, because I do not think there's anything there. It's not possible. And I'm a Libra. So folks, I know about balance. I decided about 20 years ago, I'm like, okay, balance is bullshit. Yeah. And I did interview somebody who wrote a book by that, and I loved it. I was like, oh my gosh, I've been saying this for years.
I love
it's the title of a book. But the thing is it's just having that healthy relationship in all of those areas of your life and not doing anything to the extreme, And that's really what it takes. And it's just putting yourself first and knowing your body and having the self-awareness, having the self-love, And then there's got to be some sort of spiritual component there too, where you're trusting in something greater than yourself, whether it's the universe, God, Jesus, Buddha, Allah, the lucky star, that chair, your cat, something, right? You've got to have that some sort of belief in there. And when you can have all of those, that's peak performance.
Yeah.
Now, do I do that every day? Absolutely not. It's progress, not perfection.
Well, there's that.
And then it's also being able to, when you didn't get because I am a high achiever to the extreme, Nick, meaning I thrive on wins. I thrive on accomplishment. I thrive on achieving things. Even something as simple as this morning, my day started where I'm planning September 30th is International Podcast Day. And I don't know if this will be released before then, but I'm managing director of the LA Tribune Podcast Network, and we're hosting. We decided let's do a podcast virtual summit that day and have all the podcasters on. And I secured 2 of some of the most amazing podcasters in the industry. And I secured them. And I got into town. I'm like, yes. So my day started with that. And I started thinking about it. And I'm like, I really do thrive. I get my drive from these wins. And so for me, it's about making sure and trying to have some small wins. And if I don't have the big wins, what's a little win? Oh my gosh, I drank 6 of these today. And it's 18 ounces. That's a big win, right? If I can get through 6 of these a day, right? So it's about, knowing yourself enough and having that self-awareness so you know how to manage your life. Because if you can manage your life, then the business is that's just gravy. That's just the icing. That's the cherry on top.
Just going to fall through. I think for the folks that are listening to the podcast, I want to point out that what you held up was your water bottle, because we were talking about cocktails first. So I just wanted to make sure that wasn't about
If I can have 6 of these cocktails a day, boy,
then I'm
going to be golden.
Right?
I'll be passed out by 5 o'clock, but
But no, I think it's critical, right? Because I don't think we talk enough about that. And we don't think about that enough. And, the salespeople should think about that. Entrepreneurs need to think. They have to be at a constant peak state. And if you're tired, and if you're groggy, and if you're eating junky food, listen, nobody enjoys a good meal more than me. But you know what?
Same.
When I overindulge in sugar and gluten, I feel it on Monday, right? The workout is tough. I'm just achy, right? So, you got to put it in balance. And we use Tom Brady, and Taylor Swift, so two high performers. The other thing, and I don't know how much time we have, but it's the physical aspect of things. But I'm also curious as to how, I liked how you said you got to be grounded, but do they do other things from the mental aspect of things on peak performers?
Oh, absolutely. It's so in peak performance, everything comes down to your thoughts. Okay. And the thing about our thoughts is that we have close to 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. And out of those thoughts that we have every day, about close to 80% of our thoughts are negative. Okay. So when you're a peak performer and you've got negative thoughts, doesn't matter what it is, it's going to lower your vibrational frequency, because that's what it all comes down to, is vibrational frequency. And just like you're tuning into the radio, that's a frequency. Our bodies emit energy, and we are our frequency. Everything is frequency, vibrational frequency. So every time we have a negative thought, our vibrational frequency drops. So shame, guilt, worry, anger, fear, guilt, all of those things are going to lower your vibrational frequency. So as a peak performer, and I'm going to use tennis as an example because I'm obsessed with tennis, and I have 2 USTA tennis matches coming up this weekend. It's extremely difficult because in tennis, it's point by point. It's point by point. Okay. And you have to reset every time. And I make an unforced error, which would be hitting the ball into the net. Let's just do that. Okay. Hit the ball into the net. I've got about 30 seconds to reset and get myself back in alignment so that I don't do it again. Right. And in that short time frame, what I tend to do is I have mantras. I start focusing on everything I have to be grateful for. But what ends up happening with peak performance is the confidence. And you may think that confidence, like, oh, come on, confidence, really? Yes. The people that at the highest levels are the ones that struggle with confidence more so than ever. Okay. All athletes do. I don't care what anybody says. Confidence is, and it's in business. It's in every aspect of our life. It's confidence. And if you're lacking confidence, that's going to affect everything that you're doing, because that vibrational frequency, well, you may not be aware of it. The other person is.
Sure.
And they may not be aware of it, but they know. They're like, something's off, and they can't put their finger on it. And they're like, I'm not going to buy from this person. You know why? Because they didn't have the confidence. They weren't showing up. They didn't have the confidence. And if they're showing up that way, they're not going to sell anything. Right?
You don't think about it, but there is that. So what do you project? It goes back to what we said, right? If you need that sale, you're projecting that on that person, and the person's feeling like, there's just something off, right? And maybe, I don't know what it is, but there's something off. Fascinating conversation. I just love that. I love the fact that if you think about it, 60 to 80,000 thoughts, and 80% of them are negative. I mean,
correct.
Those other 20%.
Well, Nick, if you don't deal with your negative thoughts right away, they're going to come back. 95% of them, 95% of those 80% of your thoughts, negative thoughts, are going to come back the next day and the next day and the next day. So
do they compound? Do they get stronger? Do they get more, or are they just
not necessarily? It's just going to keep showing up.
Just a constant. It's just
going to keep showing up.
Gotcha.
It's just going to keep showing up. And, like in sports especially, I recognized during a match a couple of weeks ago that my first serves were going in on the deuce side of the court, which is the right side of the court. The ad side, which is the left side of the court, they weren't going in. And I started making up a story. I'm like, oh, my ad serves are not that good. Okay. And all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, wait a second. Of course they are. They're right. Because you don't even recognize it sometimes. And they're like little tiny sprinkles of like a whisper that sometimes we're not even aware of it, and it's happening.
Yeah.
And I have to close this off with letting the audience know, just like anything, I talk about this all the time. When you're having those negative thoughts, feel it, acknowledge it, pay attention to it, ask the question, is it true? Is it true? Is that true? Are my ad serves worse than my do serves? No, that's not true. Okay. You got to go through those steps. Is it true? Just take 2 seconds. Is it true? No, it's not true. And then if you really need it, just focus on everything you have to be grateful for. And if you have a sales team, the best thing that they can do to boost their sales is before every single call, you need to get in alignment. So before you pick up that phone, focus on your gratitude. I am so grateful that I have the opportunity to speak to this potential customer that I am going to serve, and I'm going to bring them so much value. You just set yourself up for success. It takes 2 seconds. It's so simple. Well, it's so easy, but it's not simple.
It's not simple, and it's easy just to get in the roteness of it. It's funny. That's weird. I was just on a podcast last week, and we're talking about this, and they're like, well, what about remote working and not remote working? I said, well, I'm all for it, right? We figured it out. How do we maximize it? It's, the single mom that, is able to get all her work done and maybe able to sneak a couple extra, visits to the kid's school or do the laundry so she's not up till, 3:00 in the morning. I'm all for it, right? Let's figure this out. I go, but the one thing I do miss, and similar to what you just talked about, is I'm from sales floors, right? Big sales floors with a lot of people.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You can't see when John is now out of alignment, right? When he's just off. He just had 3 really bad calls. You can't get that remotely, with doing only morning conversation. Right. So you have to have enough, I guess, you have to have enough with your team to say, hey, listen, in the old days, you could say, John, let's get off the floor. Let's go get a couple Starbucks.
Right.
Let's just talk, right? Get out of your head. But you can't do that. And so I have to, maybe I'll work on technology that allows you to do that, where you're just like, ooh, he's had 3 bad calls. Let me just reach out to him, whether it's a Slack. Hey, I care about you. You're valuable to the team. Don't worry about it. There's got to be a way to do that. But I think they all have to learn that I don't know about a mantra, but they have to learn, how do I, center myself, say, I have the blessing of talking to this person and helping them throughout their day, right? And I'm going to make this the best sales call that I possibly can. Yeah. I hope I made this a good podcast.
It was, you know what? This was such a great conversation. And I had, it's so funny because you're in sales and like, we're talking about happiness and but you know what? This is great because no matter what you're doing, it's all going to come back to, we all want the same thing. We just want to be happy.
We just want to be happy. We want to take care of our family. Right. And, and absolutely. And I think I agree with that. Thank you again for having me on. What a wonderful opportunity.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone. And I hope you and your family stay happy, healthy, and safe. And that's it. Take care, everyone.